Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, entrepreneurship, and a whole lot more to help you harness your own inner tenacity and drive your career and life forward. My guest today on the podcast is Jasiri X, founder of One Hood Media, activist, and renowned recording artist, among many other titles and hats that he wears. And Jasiri X is the first independent hip-hop artist to be awarded the honorary doctorate, which he received from the Chicago Theological Seminary in 2016. Big ups on that. And Jasari first hit the world stage in 2007 with his viral song, Free the Jenna 6. And since then, he's gone on to affect real change in many arenas outside of music. But it goes much deeper. I had the privilege to meet Jasari and the entire One Hood Media crew this past September in Pittsburgh at their headquarters. And all I could say, it was a eye-opening, insane, incredible energy experience that hit the heartstring, the mind string, the body string, and it was just badass. And I needed to bring this guy on, unpack his story, and so much more. So let's do this. Jasari X, welcome to the podcast.
Jasiri. I always tell people, I'm never sorry. I'm always serious. That's all. That's my line for that. You know what I'm saying?
Jasiri, man. I like to dig in and do my research on my guests here, and I gather from your story that your mom played a huge role in your development as a person and an activist. Tell us a little bit about, growing up with mama. Tell us about that influence.
Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up in a single parent household, right? So, and I'm from the south side of Chicago. So my father left when I was very young. My father left when I was like 2-3 years old. So like my mom was, that she was the parent in the household. And, interestingly enough, like me and my mom were like very much alike. Like I was actually supposed to be born on our birthday, which was February 10th. But I was late. It's kind of like I'm always late anyway. So I was late as usual. So I was 5 days late. But our personalities were just a lot alike. And so like, when I was growing up in the south side of Chicago, we had actually moved to an area called Roseland. People from Chicago noticed the Wild Hundreds. And it was like more active than the neighborhood that I first grew up in. You know what I'm saying? And so little did I know that my mom was, went back to school and she was like plotting our escape from the South Side. And so my mother ended up going to Roosevelt University. She graduated valedictorian and she moved us. I started to get of that age where like, outside of my door was gang activity. And it's not like, it was like you rep your neighborhood, you rep where you come from. You know what I'm saying? My father was in a gang, which is one of the reasons why, my mom decided to kind of take us out of that situation, my mom and my sister. So my mom was just adamant, like, you ain't going to get my child. And so she moved us to a suburb of Pittsburgh called Monroeville. And so, like, just to put it in context, like, Jasiri's my given name. It's Swahili. It means brave warrior. So, like, my mother raised me to be socially conscious, but I was in the South Side of Chicago. Like I was in a 100% Black environment. My school was 100% Black. So I really didn't experience kind of like racism. But when I got to Monroeville, Pennsylvania, and, my school was 95%, 98% white. That's when it kind of hit me. Right. And so my mom played a huge role because, again, like when we moved to, Monroeville, which is outside of Pittsburgh, the only family was me, my mom, and my sister. That was it. We didn't, the cousins, uncles, nobody was there. It was just
you didn't have that support staff. You didn't have, but let's kind of dig into it because that's some crazy shit right there. I mean, I experienced it a little bit in middle school too. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I got a little bit of anti-Semitism growing up as a Jewish kid in Brooklyn, and we got that shit, but nothing to the extent that you did. And I remember you telling a little bit of this story when we were in Pittsburgh too. Like, how old were you when you moved? How old were you when you moved to
I was 13.
All right, so you're at a formative age, and you understand shit, and you understand the words and the hate and the kids that are saying. How did that feel as a young kid in your formative years, hearing and feeling that negativity? And I mean, you're in such a culture shock. Like, it's too much sensory overload and negativity. Like, you come home to mom and you're like, Mom, what? Yeah. I mean, this is life. This is the real world. Why we do this? Why do we move here? Why? I was fine. Like, why?
I mean, yeah, I'm just two quick stories. Like, so Please. In Monroeville, the thing to do was like the mall, Monroeville Mall. And that's like, in pop culture, I think that's where they filmed one of the Walking Dead movie, or one of the Rise of the Dead Seems movies. Right. George Romero, one of those movies, they filmed it in Monroeville Mall. So first time we go to Monroeville Mall, we're leaving the mall, and an intoxicated white man calls us niggas. And I remember it vividly, because I remember thinking, like, is he going to try to approach us? Am I going to have to fight this? Because I'm like, quote unquote, the man of the house. Although I was the youngest, I have an older sister. I'm the man there. So I remember thinking, like, am I going to have to fight this dude? Do I run up to him? Like, what do I do? How do I protect? Protecting my mom and my sister was like at the forefront of my mind. You know what I'm saying? My first day going outside in Monroeville. And so, like, outside of white people in Monroeville, the largest minority are people from India, because Monroeville had this very large Hindu temple. So I go out and I see, people darker than me. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, so I'm, making friends with these two Indian kids, Jignesh and DP, and a white kid comes over and starts to like pick on them. So, I say, I'm like, pick on somebody your own size. And he was like, what, like you? Now, he probably didn't know I was from the South Side of Chicago. So
you got it in your blood.
Yeah, I was under a balcony. I grabbed a balcony, kicked him in the chest, beat him down. And that was day one. You know what I'm saying? So, like, going to school, and kind of like you said, I remember going to school, somebody being racist towards me, says something derogatory about my mom. I beat him down. I get suspended. And so my mom, like, she understood my anger, but my mom was like, look, to my mom, education was everything. My mom became a nuclear engineer. Right. So I'm talking about from poverty in the South Side of Chicago to becoming a nuclear engineer.
Maybe I should just have your mom on the show. Maybe I should have your mom on.
I mean, she passed in 2017. But I'm gonna tell you this, when she passed, she didn't even have an engineering degree. I don't even know how she did it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so to my mom, education was everything. So fighting in school meant that's going to go on my permanent record, and that might affect what colleges I get into. So she was like, you cannot fight. However you respond, you cannot fight. And that's how I got into activism, because I knew I had to do something to push back on what I was seeing. I couldn't physically fight. And so I became an activist at Gateway Senior High School, where we started like a club for students of color. We petitioned and actually got to school to teach a Black history class. And that was my introduction into activism.
Right. Activism, but activism like with passivism, like, how do you keep that mentality where, listen, there's times when you need to protect yourself and not violence first?
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, my mom basically told me, like, I would have to pick another place to live.
Yeah, we're going to get kicked out of here. We're going to have to move.
Suspended from fighting. But I think, so I actually saw, like, we were effective in what we did, right? So, because, if I beat up a white kid, what does that mean, right? But we actually were able to start a club where we created, like, a support system for students of color that I don't think it's still there now, but there were people that came after me that was like, hey, I was in that club. There was somebody at the event that you were at that was like, yo, I went to Gateway and I was a part of that club.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit. You know what I'm saying? Legacy. So like, yeah, we were able to get a Black history class taught, even though like it was a white teacher that taught it. He was a cool teacher. You know what I'm saying? He was somebody that was down. So it was like, I actually, like, students after that were able to learn Black history because of what I did. So like, that's so much more rewarding and lasting. It has more of an effect than just punching somebody in the face, Let's
I don't know if you talked about this before. Let's just kind of, I'm going to make a left turn here. Let's talk about that teacher in that class. I mean, I was assuming it'd be a Black teacher, but that was a white teacher. Like, How did that affect you? And was that kind of the roots of like understanding like allyship and understanding that like people that don't look like me actually give a shit about helping people like me?
Yeah, I mean, it was twofold, right? Because we had one black teacher. I'll never forget. We had one black teacher. His name was Mr. Smith, and he taught typing. That was it. That was the only black teacher we had in the school. And so, like, but it was also one of them things where it was like we're a compromise, right? Okay, we got a Black history class. Okay, we got this white teacher. But again, he was one of my favorite teachers. He was a teacher who had a like progressive sense and values. I think, like, looking back, I believe he might have even been, a queer teacher. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't say all that back then. You know what I'm saying? This is like the late 90s. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it was that thing of like, okay. And we had like, because Gateway was a place that was predominantly white, there were, white allies and white students and folks that were on our side in terms of helping us to do what we were doing. Although I still, at that time harbored a lot of resentment towards white people. And I think like I think it also showed like systemically how, the fact that although we had black students, we didn't have black teachers, how systemically that could even affect how you were brought up. So just to touch on that, right? So like I was a straight A student, and sometimes I would feel bad because I was in classes where I was the only black student. Like sometimes I wanted to like, damn, I would rather be in the other classes because that's where the black students were. You know what I'm saying? In these classes, I'm the only black student in the class. And so even that carried like a stigma to it, even though I was a good student, graduated with honors and all of that.
Yeah, let's talk about education for a moment. You mentioned how important it was to your mom, but you didn't finish college, right? How did that sit with your mom?
I mean, my mom was pissed, you know what I'm saying? My mom was tight, and just to put it in perspective, like when I left, I wanted to get out of Monroeville, Pittsburgh area, right? I didn't even apply to any Pittsburgh area schools. I was like, I'm leaving, and I wanted to be by a city. So I went to University of Maryland, College Park. It was a college, but it was close to DC. Yep. It was like more black people there. But 2 years in, Maryland raised tuition only on out-of-state students. And because of the expense of it, my mom was like, hey, you can come back to Pittsburgh and, I'll get you a car. I'll help you get an apartment. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, it was like, all right, I'll come back. You know what I'm saying? But what I didn't see was when I came back to Pittsburgh, none of my friends were in school. And my friends were doing other things besides college. And I ended up hanging out with my friends that were doing other things. That old
story, man.
More so than going to school. And then I'm thinking I'm going to be a rapper. I had achieved like local recognition as a rapper, as part of a rap group. You know what I'm saying? But so I'm thinking I'm going to be a rapper, but I didn't have any business. Like I didn't have an idea on how.
There's no acumen, no business acumen.
Yeah. Hey, bro, I thought like. There yet. Yeah, I thought Diddy was going to come or Russell Simmons going to just knock on my door one day.
Like, come with the camera and sign you on the spot, give you a contract.
Like, I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know how to like get from Pittsburgh to the world with my music. And so I'm just telling my mom like, oh man, I don't need school. I'm going to be a rapper. And then I find myself like,
What was her reaction, man? What was her reaction when you said I want to be a rapper?
She was really, really angry. She was really upset because, my mom was from that era of like, you get your degree, you get a good job, and then like
set you up for success.
Yeah. Right. You get a good job and that's your life. And I didn't necessarily like my last year at Pitt, I got all F's and 1A. And that was a class on black film. And it was like that was something I was interested in.
I got to pause for a second. There's two kind of funny things here. First and foremost, I applied to University of Maryland and I got into the honors, but not the presidential. My parents are like, we live in New York, and both my parents are New York City teachers. They're like, we can't afford to send you there. And then they're like, you go to a state school, you go to Buffalo, you go to a state school, we could get you a car, we could help you with your apartment, and that's kind of funny from that standpoint. But it's like there's a lot of similarities here, man. It's really kind of funny. But like when you're Let's shift gears here, man. Let's talk about hip hop. I love to talk about hip hop influences here for a little bit. For me, and it's so funny. Like for me, it's like it's Wu-Tang, it's DMX, and it's Nas. Like that's my New York City vibe. Like that's kind of where it comes from. Like that's like it for me. And like we could probably have a whole separate podcast on your thoughts of the current state of hip hop, which I can't even like the shit my daughter listens to on the TikTok stuff. I'm like Drake is it like that Drake? Well, like what is that? Like what? And everything else is like auto tuned and everything. So when you guys, I didn't know what was happening when we came on. You guys hit the stage, and I was sitting right in the front. I'm like, I'm like, I just fucking got like fired up, and you guys brought it. And then who was the dude in the flak jack that came out? The big dude.
Oh, that's Manny.
Oh, he just hit it. I was like, yo, that was fire. So let's talk hip hop. Let's talk about your hip hop. Your hip hop influences and like.
Well, you just named them. I mean, the only one that you didn't name was Mobb Deep. You know, I like Mobb Deep was Shook Ones was the reason I wanted to rap. Like Shook Ones, I remember where I was. You know, I was riding with friends. I was actually in Newark, and the song came on the radio, and it was like everything stopped. You know what I'm saying? And you know, when he said my gunshots to make it levitate, I was like, I got chills. I was like, I couldn't believe. I was like, who is this? You know, and so I wanted to. It was like, could I give somebody that feeling? And you know, a friend of mine, he got turntables for Christmas. He was like, I'm gonna be a DJ, you be the rapper. So I did a rap. It was terrible.
Our first time usually isn't everything, man.
Of course, but people like supported me. People encouraged me, and then what I found out was like it was actually therapeutic, right? Like it was almost like cathartic. A diary.
It was cathartic. You're getting it out. Yeah.
All the stuff that I'm going through at Gateway, I'm writing raps, and so this is why my raps are conscious, right? I couldn't write about the streets. I'm in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, right? I mean, I'm from Chicago, but I don't live there, and I didn't feel comfortable, you know, writing about what was going on in Chicago because I wasn't there. And so, you know, my raps were conscious and like I said, so it was therapy for me. And then, you know, I was able to find my voice. My biggest influence is Nas, you know, like Nas to me is, you know, that person that was able to merge like consciousness, streets and reality in such a powerful way. So that was for me. And it was like when I found my voice, but this is the thing this is what happened, right? People kept telling me, nobody wants to hear conscious rap. Like, no one wants to hear conscious music. You know, this was the, like, early 2000s, man. It was a Bow Wow. It was, like, you know, shiny suits. You know what I'm saying? So, like, people was telling me, like, people was like, no one wants to hear conscious music. So I stopped rapping because I believed it. Like, I believed, like, and I didn't want to be inauthentic in the music that I created.
Right. So you don't want to front. You don't want to make some bullshit.
Yeah. So I just went to, you know, I got a regular job. You know, I was a mortgage broker for a little bit. And then I started working for Pittsburgh Public Schools. And that was the moment where I kind of started rapping again because.
What were you doing in the schools?
So I was what was called a teen parent advocate. I was the first person in Pittsburgh Public Schools to do counseling and case management for all the teen fathers. So what that did was it allowed me to go to all these different schools. But in 2 schools, they said I could do after school programming. And so the after school programming I did was a hip hop club. It's fascinating because, you know, Wiz just talked about this on this interview this week, right? That, you know, I did a hip hop club at Alderdice, and Wiz Khalifa was one of the students that came to my hip hop club. You know what I'm saying? And he was amazing. Like was, yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. This was Cam. You know what I'm saying? We knew him as Cam, but you know, he was already like when I met Wiz, I think he was a senior. He was already a phenomenal artist already. Like I didn't add nothing. He was nice, and we watched him. Go from local rapper to international superstar in about 2 years. And I really I'm still in awe of, you know, how he carries himself, how he handles himself, his maturity. You know, his grandfather is a Muslim brother that everybody in the community knows, his grandfather Jabril. So that's where that Khalifa part comes from. And then, you know, at that same high school was, you know, Mac Miller, man, he rest in peace.
Look at this.
And I remember, you know, me and Mac were actually on the scene together. Like Wiz helped me, and Mac really helped me get on because they came before me in terms of having, you know, national success. Wiz went first. And I remember talking to Mac and him saying, man, I'm going out to LA. I got these meetings as he's about to graduate high school, and then seeing Mac blossom. But me and Mac were on the scene at the same time, so we did a lot of shows together. The first cover I was on, me and Mac Miller were on that same cover.
Awesome, man.
And so, you know, and so they actually had people say, well, what else is going on in Pittsburgh? Oh, there's this conscious dude named Jasiri that's there. And so although I'm older than both of them, they actually helped open the door of
That's
Pittsburgh
awesome.
for me as an artist to get known.
What I want to kind of backtrack and dig into hip hop a little bit, because I don't usually have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's actually in the scene here.
Yeah.
There's a collaboration. It's one thing if you're just solo and you're doing your shit on stage by yourself. But
Absolutely.
I mean, one of the things that I love about Wu-Tang Clan is the contrast between all the voices and how they vibe.
Yes.
And I've seen documentaries. I've watched them all, how they write in the studio, man. If you go in Ghostface to the RZA, Raekwon,
Absolutely.
and it's going back and forth, You God. And it's like different voices, different vibes coming out of different places. Like, give us a little behind the scenes. When you guys are putting your shows together and you're writing your songs, like, what's a creative process like? Like, let's dig into a little collaboration. I never get to talk about it. It's not on my notes, and I want to dig in a little bit here.
It's interesting. Okay, so like when I came out in Pittsburgh, I was in a group called Concrete Elite, right? And so the group was all, you know, 4 other rappers from Philly and me. So so like it would be competitive. You know what I'm saying? Like there were songs where we would like subtly diss one another. I mean,
so it's like a battle between the song, and it adds to the tension, and it like gets it.
Yeah, it was songs where I remember writing the verse, and I heard, you know, it was a dude in a group named OMG, and I was like, oh no, I got to rewrite my verse. Like, he smoked me on that. So it actually, I feel like when you're in a group, when you're in a member of a group, it actually makes you better, because you have people to kind of, like you said, compete against and work against. And it's like, oh, he did that. Oh, let me go back and do this, or let me go back and get inspired. So like, flash forward. And it's funny because we ended up having a difference of opinion on where we wanted to go career-wise. We had got a record offer from Motown Records, and we ended up, because of an internal disagreement, not signing and kind of going our separate ways. And so like, flash forward to like One Hood. I mean, it really is, you know, the song that we did a song called The Government. And it started with like Farouk saying, I'm gonna write a rap to a beat. Pusha T just did a song. I can't remember the song, but like Fat Joe's on there. It's crack. It's a banging beat. And Farouk wrote a rap to it. You know what I'm saying? Or should I say Saeed? That's his rap name. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna write something to it. And I wrote something to it. And then we got the beat that we used. We got an original beat. Oh, we gonna use this beat. Right. And then it was like, oh man, you should write something. Trouble, you should write something. And it became like this, you know, complete song. Especially when Manny wrote his, it was like, oh snap, okay, well, this is really going somewhere. And so that's kind of how it was. It was really like that collaborative. But we're all like playing off of, like, I played off of Farouk's verse. And yeah, and so it's kind of like, okay, this is the subject matter, this is the cadence, okay, and then boom, we do it. You know what I mean? And like from a skill set perspective, I mean, are you like skilled, like just straight up freestyle? Or are you the type from a creative point, I need to write this shit down and work on it and get it out there? Yeah, I'm a writer. I mean, so I had a blessing of actually working with he doesn't like the term ghostwriter. But he's one of like hip hop's, you know, best known
creative influence.
Yeah, his name is Rhymefest. So he co-wrote Jesus Walks. He co-wrote Glory. So he's one of the only hip hop artists that have a Grammy and an Oscar. And so, you know, writing with him, it was really about like making sure every line has a purpose, has a hit, like nothing throwaway. So he made me, like, normally what I do is I'll write a verse, and then I'll go back and I'll say, okay, where are the weak points? Where are the points where maybe I didn't make myself as clear as I want to, or the lines didn't resonate in a way that
it didn't land.
Yeah, and then I'll go and so that's how the verse that I, you know, spit, ironically saying, you know, Mama was a saint, not Teresa, she had a better heart. Daddy was a Blackstone, 73rd and Eberhard. You know what I'm saying? Like, the two sides of me kind of coming together, that was me kind of, so I'll write that. And then I went back, and there were parts of that rhyme that I had wrote that I took out, because it was like, nah, that wasn't strong enough. Okay, I'm gonna add this. And so I'm very detailed so it might take me longer as a writer than just freestyle. And I want every line to hit. I'm interested in like my rhymes making a point and, a feeling that folks get from what they hear from me.
That's awesome, man. And thank you. Thank you for that insight, because I think that's something that people don't understand, the creative process in hip hop of even being a solo artist versus being in a group.
Hey everybody, first I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me and my guest on the podcast. This show is my canvas to showcase amazing people from the world of recruiting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, and unpack their career journeys for everyone to learn from. But this show is also a business generator for me, as well as creating thought leadership and endless amazing content. And I've taken what I've learned in the past 3 years and over 200 recorded and 100 live shows and distilled it down into a digital playbook that I call the Pause Course. Now you could learn how I build, manage, and produce the podcast and use it to drive real business development and relationships. Today I'm sharing all of my secrets behind the podcast, and you can get it all at thepausecourse.com. This course is for anyone, whether you're starting out or an advanced podcaster using it for B2B and B2C. It's filled with all of my insights, learnings, tips, tricks, and templates. So get it now at thepausecourse.com and learn all my secrets. Thanks.
I want to talk about the Nation of Islam. You're a registered member of that. Dude, what's two ways I want to go about this? One, what's the biggest misconception out there in the world if someone's not part of it?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest misconception is like people in Nation of Islam like hate white people, hate Jewish people. Like that's probably the biggest misconception, that it's like that it's a movement built on hate, right? Now I will say, like, I'm not an active member now, so I just want to make that determination, because I didn't want I don't want anybody to think I
said registered member.
Yeah. I just wanted I'm just trying to be clear, because
I got a AAA card, doesn't mean I get my car towed.
That's
right?
What I'm saying. I'm not a spokesman for it, but I think that's the thing. I think like and particularly post Tree of Life in Pittsburgh, we've done a lot of Black Jewish solidarity, so I've had these conversations. Like For me, the Nation of Islam was like an ability to like I wanted to do something more positive with my life, and it's like, okay, here's a community that is also doing positive things, that's looking at the problems and issues of the Black community, that's like pro-Black first. And so, and
nothing
that
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah. I mean, they're really doing positive
people do that. We're pro-Jew. I mean, you are, because that's your crew.
100%.
There's nothing bad about that.
Yeah. So that was my introduction, and it helped me, begin to like study both the Quran and the Bible, like, and it helped me as like the work I do now, like it helped me become like a community organizer, because, at a very young age, I was the minister of the mosque in Pittsburgh. And so that was also an interesting experience, particularly I'm also an artist, like, some, talking to older believers that are looking at me like, what is this dude? Right? What is this dude doing? And so, so it was an experience, like there was a training and a service that I got that I use every day.
I mean, talk about the organization. I mean, that's something I've learned too about the Nation of Islam too, from an organizational standpoint and how they operate. Have you taken some of those best practices into leading One Hood, which we'll get into in a minute? Like, what are those early lessons from like how to run an organization? Because that's big. Those are big takeaways. Yeah, like so, and like so, also like how to inspire people, how to move people, right? So like, particularly being so young, I had to study. I had to show that I had a understanding of like the Quran, the Bible, like the theology of Elijah Muhammad. So I had to study, because I had to teach all the time, right? So like for me, like in terms of like public speaking, because I would be teaching sometimes 3-4 times a week. And so now to get in front of a mic and get in front of a crowd where a lot of people are, public speaking becomes like they're very fearful of, it's like natural to me because I did it so much. And, what I'm saying? I prepared, I put my, lectures together. And so like for me now, particularly if I do public speaking or go out and say something, I'm very comfortable doing that because I did so much, when I was a part of the nation. What was it like meeting Louis Farrakhan? What was that experience like?
Man, Yeah, I mean, it was again. I think like people, people have this view of Minister Farrakhan that's very, every time you see him, he's
Negative
speaking
shit.
loud.
Yeah.
He's like mad. So like,
Why are you so mad?
He's such a loving. Like, it's so interesting. It's so many stories. Like one story, I remember he came to Pittsburgh, and I went to the hotel room, and he was like, he said, I want something to eat. He said, he said, is there a good Jewish deli around here? I want something.
Oh, and
he wasn't joking. He was like, yo, I want something from. So I was like, okay, well, Squirrel Hill was the area. So I think like, again, people think he's really a very like super loving person. And to understand, like he's he definitely is from a different, he's almost 90 now. I think he's 89.
Different era, different life he lived. Era. He saw shit that we thankfully,
100%. But at the same time, like my conversations that I've had with him have been about like, how can we help our community? I was one of the people. This is when I had left, the Ministry of the Nation of Islam that helped organize the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. Was called Justice or Else. And I remember having conversations with Minister Farrakhan around like, hey, brother minister, like, these three women that started Black Lives Matter are queer Black women. You know what I'm saying? And like, if we use certain language, we could alienate this group of people and this movement that we're seeing happening right now. So again, I'm coming as somebody that, was in Ferguson, was in Baltimore, knew these folks. And so I could kind of say to him, and then seeing him come at Justice or Else and really to me be more inclusive in how he presented himself, I thought that was a pretty dope.
That's an interesting takeaway. And you mentioned before Tree of Life, the temple shooting. How did you show up for the Jewish community, and how did they receive it?
Yeah, so again, this is I don't know how long of a story I can tell, but
whatever you want, man. It's my show. I go as long as I want.
So
my story, I write it.
When the Tree of Life happened, so again, like when I remember Tree of Life happened, and prior to the Tree of Life, really 4 months before Tree of Life, we had a high profile police killing of a young man named Antoine Rose II. He was shot 3 times in his back while running away. And so Pittsburgh is for those that don't know, Pittsburgh is like 23% Black. We're a majority white city. And so anytime we ever had organizing marches, or it'd always be like multicultural, right? And so there was a lot of, activists in the Jewish community that came and stood with us to get justice for Antoine. So when Tree of Life happened, and the folks were making a call, particularly the first call was like, hey, it was like to protest, Donald Trump. A lot of people believe, including myself, that a lot of the rhetoric that Donald Trump, helped to amplify was what, led to what happened at the Tree of Life. You know what I'm saying? I
don't disagree with that, man.
Yeah. So we just showed up as allies. We just showed up. We came. We stood with our community, and then right after that, this is where it gets. So right after that, we had done. We have what we call the Artivist Academy. We have an academy where we are at the intersection of art and activism, and so we were supporting artists that are socially conscious and activists. So we were having our first Artivist Academy event, and we had just announced right before Tree of Life that Tamika Mallory and my son were going to be the principal speakers, right? So after the Tree of Life, people saw the picture with Tamika Mallory, who, people have accused of being anti-Semitic. I don't agree, but again, I'm not a Jewish person. I can't speak to, the hurt and pain of Jewish people. So I got a call from an artist that we work with, a Jewish woman, named Fat Man D. That's her artist name. And she said, hey, yo, like they killing y'all on Jewish Facebook. Like they dragging one hood. And I was like, oh, damn. So I went into it and I said, hey, I'm willing to sit down and meet with anybody. I didn't want to do the Facebook thing. I was like, anybody
it's toxic, man.
Yeah. So I met with like groups of Jewish people throughout that week and just began to have like conversations. And it was enlightening to me. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of things that I learned and sitting down and building with the Jewish community. People found out, like I had a fellowship from the Nathan Cummings Foundation the Nathan Cummings is a Jewish foundation. You know what I'm saying? So like when we actually did this event, what was so interesting about it, the day of the event, it was a snowstorm. So Tamika didn't even get to the event until it was over. But like a lot of people in the Jewish community came out. They didn't know One Hood. They didn't know us. They didn't know what we do. They saw us. They saw what we did. They saw the performances, and they are really like supportive. So it led to a lot of, and then, Sharon Alpert, who was the CEO of Nathan Cummings Foundation, also came out, herself, you know what I'm saying, as a Jewish woman. And so that led to a lot of conversations with, we did a lot of solidarity work with Ben the Ark, Progressive Jewish Organization, Repair the World.
You're a builder, man. You're a builder, man. That's what you
so
do, man.
You
bring people together. You were meant to be in Pittsburgh, man.
And I'm telling you, it actually led to, but again, like I learned, like I looked at people as white. I never like put white people into different categories, right? So like I looked at Squirrel Hill, the Jewish neighborhood in Pittsburgh, as a white neighborhood. So it did actually, having conversations with folks, it made me understand. I would think like, as black people, as a black person, you endear anti-blackness everywhere at all times. I mean, every day. And a lot of times just going out in the world, you have to say to your mind, like, am I going to turn up or am I going to just let this slide? So when Jewish people would, it would be something, I'd be like, that seems small. Why are they turning up on something that seems like a small thing? But then I didn't know the history of, when people would start with words and then violence would come upon Jewish communities and then Jewish people have to move. A dude told me the other day,
right? A lot of similarities.
Yeah. A friend of mine told me the other day, he said, did you know that the United States, this has been the longest place the Jewish people have been? Because that blew my mind. I was like,
persecuted.
What? I had no idea. And so I think for me, it was like, okay, like how can we collectively come together to battle white supremacy? You know what I'm saying? I felt like Antoine was a victim of white supremacist murder by this police officer, and so were the victims of the Tree of Life. And so
I think we met his mom.
Yeah, his mom is our fellow. And so and ironically, people, it's out there, but his grandmother's Jewish. Antoine's grandmother is Jewish. Is white, Michelle Kinney's biracial. Her mom is Jewish. You know what I'm saying? So that's even another thing around like, look how closely we are connected and we might not even know. And so that's what we've been trying to build in Pittsburgh. Like how we do a lot of work with the Holocaust Center in Pittsburgh as well. How can we build bridges? And, it'd be this. We went to, this was the 4-year anniversary of the Tree of Life. We just go as an organization to the event and just showing up. We got so many people that were just like, it was almost like they were like, man, we're so happy you came. And it's like, nah, we got to come.
Yeah. We're in this together, man. We're in this together, man. It's one world. Look, dude, I got to ask you, hot take on the spot here.
Yes.
Kyrie and Kanye, what the fuck, man?
I mean,
give me your hot take. Give me your straight up hot take from the heart.
Kanye. So I texted a friend of mine, and I said, Kanye. Basically, I said Kanye is a white supremacist. I said Kanye is hanging with. This was 2 months ago. This is before he went off the bridge.
Yeah.
I said, Kanye is with Candace Owens. He's with Tucker Carlson. He loves Donald Trump. I told my friend, he's a literal white supremacist.
But you didn't think it was just for show? You didn't think this was just an act?
No.
Like to get fucking ratings and this and that?
When you say like George Floyd died of fentanyl is a white supremacist, that's straight from the white supremacist playbook. And it's an attempt to try to bring down the movement that came out of George Floyd's death. Right. And my friend was like, that's a reach. And I when he did all the Hitler stuff, I emailed it back to him. So I do think that, he's around white supremacists. That's who he's with Nick Fuentes. He's with the January 6th people.
I feel it's like a Chappelle skit, right? I feel it's like 100%. A Chappelle skit happening with the white supremacists, right? Like what the fuck?
Yeah. Kyrie, I think, was genuinely trying to find about himself. And this is, I just talked to a friend of mine that knows Kyrie.
I'm with you on this one.
And I think Kyrie, and then Kyrie, the issue wasn't really, he right after people asked him about the documentary, he said, oh, I didn't know that, my bad. But he has an adversarial relationship with the media. And a lot of it had to do with the COVID stuff. a lot of
because he didn't get the vaccine. He didn't want to play. He already had a bad rap in the media. So that's what the media does. They fucking snowball that shit.
100%. But it did reveal a lot of things to me. And so I think like for Kyrie, I felt like he handled it in a way that ended up becoming positive. Now it's interesting to see, like, you know, Nike cancel him and all this. So that's fascinating, right? And the most fascinating thing to me about the Kyrie situation is the fact that Amazon was like, hey, yo, we just going, hey. Yeah. And you know, Amazon could do that because Amazon's like, what you gonna do? You gonna go to the store? You gonna walk to a store? No, you're gonna have, you're gonna hit us up and we're gonna deliver it right to your door. And so the fact that Amazon was like, we ain't taking it down. And so I think as a Black person, you say, okay, well, we want to see that energy towards Amazon that was at Kyrie, but it's a different situation. And so I think it led to even the Chappelle on Saturday Night Live. You know, I looked at Dave Chappelle's monologue on Saturday Night Live. I thought it was brilliant. I talked to Jewish people that said, okay, but these parts hurt us. You know what I'm saying? And so for us, again, it's like we've been doing this dialogue. So we're actually looking and saying like, okay, how can we expand some of this dialogue? Because in my experience, a lot of it is language, right? I'll give you an example. I had a Jewish, so, you know, I went to Palestine. I did a song called Checkpoint, right? And it was my experience in Palestine. It was a crazy experience, right? So I had a Jewish person say to me how they interpreted the term from the river to the sea. And it's like, from a Jewish person's perspective, they're like, we look at that as you don't want Jewish people in this area at all. And it's based on a historical experience that Jewish people have. They were forced out of different places. So now if I put myself in a person's shoes that's had that experience, I could understand why you would think that. You understand what I'm saying? And so I think, like, I was like,
perspective changes everything, man.
Yeah, I can understand from your historical experience why, because I was like, I told her, I said, man, I said that a million times. I never looked at it that way. I looked at it as just freedom, like we're asking for freedom as Black people in America, like freedom to move, freedom to live how you want to live and do what you want to do. But it's like, so I feel like a lot of times the language trips us up.
It's positioning, man.
Yeah, and we come from different places. We come from a different culture. Black people, like we talk about this all the time. Like, if a Black person likes you, they will joke on you. Like, we joke on, like we play the dozens. And that's like, we're actually showing you love. But if you're not from our culture, you might think
it's hostile.
Yeah, we're purposely trying to put you down, and it's like, nah, that's like a way of
it's ball busting. It's brotherhood, man. Dude, all right,
exactly. So some of those cultural things we're gonna. If the more we talk, the more we meet, we can get past some of those cultural things, those language things, and get to the heart. Because at the heart, to me, it's a similar struggle.
Yeah, dude, let's talk about heart, man. Let's talk about the One Hood story. Give it to us, man. Tell us the origin. Give us it down and dirty. Give us what it's all about. Give us the heart. Because I felt that. I saw it, man. Yeah. Let's hear what it's all about.
So One Hood actually started around community violence. I don't use the term Black on Black crime. I feel like that's a white supremacist term, right? People commit crime where they live. We don't say
Black people where I live. I'm a criminal.
Asian crime, right? Mexico as Mexico.
No, it's Mexican on Mexican crime, right? Yeah, Canadian on Canadian crime. Right. No one says that shit. I agree. I never even, dude. I've never I haven't processed that yet, but that's an interesting one that's going to rattle around my head for a little bit. Thank you. Yeah.
So we saw that, right, and it was like this is 2006, right? It wasn't like that we didn't like the NAACP or the Urban League. We just felt that they weren't in touch with what was happening right now in our community. And so we felt like we wanted to do something that brought hip hop. We wanted to bring hip hop culture and music and art into the space of activism. And that's what we called it One Hood. So One Hood was our way of saying our unity is our power, right? That all of our communities are dealing with all of these various issues. But if we came together, instead of fighting with another, we could deal with the systemic root causes. And so we came out and we started to do, activism around hip hop culture. We started to bring art into the space, and we just had this. I mean, when we first started One Hood in Pittsburgh, it was like it got so big. It was to the point where we had to stop doing interviews. Like, it was everywhere, you know what I'm saying? And we got a little scared, like, oh shit, like, you know what I mean? So we started, we're doing some activism. Then we started an academy. So Heinz Endowment did a study in 2010, how the media in Pittsburgh covers Black men. 90% of the time is crime and sports, right?
No positivity. Sports positivity, which
right. Quality of life stories about Black men is less than 3%. So I had just did a song called What If the Tea Party Was Black that went viral. If you remember the Tea Party, I kind of flipped it. You know what I'm saying? I read a essay by Tim Wise. I made a rap about it. He was like, somebody made a rap about an essay I wrote and it blew up. Right. And it went viral. It enabled me to like leave my job, to have a career as a rapper, to sign a record deal. But I come back to a city. Pittsburgh is traditionally the poorest inner city Black community in the country. We're number one. Normally it's Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, or like the top three. And so I wanted to do something in our community. So we started an academy to teach Black men how to analyze media, create media for themselves, utilizing social media. I came off of, initially, when I did the Gina 6, I came off of MySpace. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't go, somebody didn't discover me. I put a song on MySpace, it blew up. I was out there, right? I put a song on YouTube, it blew up. Now I got a career. And so I felt like I wasn't special, that we could use social media in order to kind of change the narrative around Black men. And because I rap and one of our other founding members, Paradise, was part of a rap group called X-Clan in the late 80s, early 90s, we attracted a lot of rappers and producers. So then we became like almost like an arts collective. And we were the people that like, we would rap at the rallies and, you know what I'm saying, all of that. Then I got, the Nathan Cummings Fellowship to launch the Artivist Academy. I'm a traveling artist, really from 2012 to 2017. I was doing maybe about 200 shows a year, speaking at universities and shows. Nathan Cummings Fellowship allowed me to come back to Pittsburgh and actually run organization and build it, right? And then Heinz gave a substantial support, and it's like now we were running, and then in 2020 was like the first year that it was beneficial to be a Black-led organization. Like prior to 2020, it was like people hey bro, people thinking like we was gonna buy a bunch of chains if they gave us money. I don't know what they were thinking, but it was like we need support. So in 2020, we got a lot of support. We got support from folks like the Jordan brand and Starbucks, and you know what I'm saying? And it was like that support allowed us to grow, hire more people, and have an effect. So much so that, when we bring hip hop into political engagement, right? In 2020, we didn't start in 2019. In 2020, Pennsylvania decided the election for Joe Biden. In 2021, we elected the first Black mayor in Pittsburgh's history, Mayor Ed Gainey. And this past year in 2022, we elected the first Black woman congressperson in Pennsylvania history, not from Philly side.
No,
from
the other side.
Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. And so we've been having a lot of success. And we're growing and we're getting stronger. And, these are our 5 pillars of One Hood: art, activism, education, media, and civic engagement. We have a site called blackpittsburgh.com to kind of tell our own stories in journalistic form. And so the more support we've gotten, the more ability we've been able to have to affect change in our region, in our community. And for us, Pittsburgh was called the most livable city in America, even though we had one of the poorest Black communities in the country. In 2018, Pittsburgh was called the worst city in America for a Black woman to live. So we're always about making it livable for everybody, not just a select few. And that's been our work. And thankfully, we've been able to have a lot of success.
That's a good stuff, man. What are the big initiatives on your plate heading into 2023?
Man, so a couple of things. So one, we were blessed to get a national grant from the Wallace Foundation. We were one of 13 arts organizations of color to get support from the Wallace Foundation. So that support not only was monetary, but we have an ethnographer to help tell our organizational history. We have like a research team to help us put together like our theory of action. And so like that's going to help us really develop our Artivist Academy to the level that we've always wanted it to be. We have, We have a podcast called This Week in White Supremacy.
Yeah, I watch it, man.
Yeah, we just had
it's spot on, man. It's spot on.
Yeah, we're actually in negotiations right now with a network to actually, help grow that audience as well. We have two really important races coming up. One is our county executive who runs our county, and another is our DA. When we first got into civic engagement,
it was critical, man. Controls the money and the
yeah, it was because of our DA race. So like these are it's I know people focused on the last election because it was national. And look, every race we touched, I'm gonna just pop my collar a little bit. Every race we touched last election, we won. Fetterman, Shapiro, you know what I'm saying? I'm blessed to be on Governor-elect Shapiro transition team. Like we out here, we doing it. But, these local races oftentimes are more impactful and important than the national race. Like
on the ground, man. They're on the ground.
Yeah. So we have that coming up. And I think for us, it's also just like growing our organizational footprint. Hopefully, we're hoping to hire more people. We're hoping to help more young Black creatives in Pittsburgh. And we're looking at expanding to different places. So you mentioned Brooklyn. You might see one hood in Brooklyn, shortly, and some other places. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We feel like we have a good model, right? And our model is really, I feel like, there was a point in time when I was a political rapper. And I was going to stuff like Netroots. I was like the political rapper. And I will always feel like we don't use art and culture enough in progressive political spaces, right? We're cooler. You know what I'm saying? Like we're cooler. And a lot of artists agree with a lot of the political messages, but we don't engage them at a high enough level. And so for us, we're bringing art and culture into the education spaces, into the schools. We're bringing art and culture. And when I say art and culture, I'm specifically meaning hip hop culture into, spaces around, progressive politics. We're bringing art and culture and hip hop culture into media and journalism spaces, and we're having success with it. So we feel like we got a really great model that we can take to other places to hopefully affect change in those places as well.
I love it, man. When it's all said and done, how do you want One Hood to be remembered?
As a group that really wanted to see a better world, you know what I'm saying? Ultimately, like, I joke about it. Like, if you look at my discography, because, I made a lot of songs about police brutality. Like, people will know me for the song I did with Trayvon. I was the first artist to do a song around Trayvon, first artist to do a song about Oscar Grant. I did a lot of, the song that I did with Mr. Belafonte and Sankofa was called Don't Let Him Get Away with Murder. It was reflecting on Ferguson. So a lot of people look and it's like whenever you see me rapping, I'm mad or sad, but I'm actually an optimist. Like I actually believe
it's emotion.
Yeah, but I believe we have the power to change the world. Like, and so I think I would like people to look back and say, you know what, they didn't wait till something happened, right? They were proactive and trying to make Pittsburgh a better place, trying to make, America a better place, and trying to make the world a better place. And like, that was, it wasn't for us. It wasn't about trying to get the most money, the biggest car, the freshest outfit. It was really about I have children, for those that have children coming up, like we want to make this world better for them. And that's what I'm in it for.
Bro, I'm spot on, man, right? Like, and I talk about legacy all the time. My legacy is leaving this world a better place for my children. That's a legacy, man. Dude, before I wrap it up and bring it home, and first and foremost, thank you for opening up and just being fucking straight with me, man. Dude, before I go, and I got to read this one. I have a quick question that came from my producer, Chris. He wanted me to ask you. You interviewed Lupe Fiasco recently, legend, master lyricist, unique, powerful mind that goes beyond hip hop. He wants to know, what was it like to sit there and kick it with him?
It was really dope. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know Lupe, right? And the experience I had with Lupe was about 7 years ago. I was in Philly. We were doing a conversation on Lupe. People were tweeting about it, and Lupe tweeted, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." And he showed up.
Shit.
It was
real
cool.
Shit, right? Yep.
But he showed up. He came. He spoke. So I didn't know how he was going to come, and he really came, man, with love, with a lot of insight. This was right after all the stuff started happening with Kanye. If you haven't seen the interview, his insight into Kanye was very powerful as well. And he was just honest, and so as a fan, he's at MIT. I mean, the dude he's teaching a class at MIT right now on hip hop. He's one of the most brilliant people
Yeah.
that I ever know. I did want to say one thing though, right? Because your background is marketing, and you talk a lot about marketing, and like for us, like I think even though we're a community organization, I think about marketing and branding all the time. And the greatest contribution anybody made to our organization was early on when we first started. A designer named Will Fagans gave us the One Hood logo. And that logo has been like our calling card. And when we show up, when we're in our shirts, it's like it becomes like One Hood thing. So just as you're like, because we're doing altruistic stuff, we're still competing for attention. We're still competing for eyes.
Of course you are. It's a modern world, man.
100%. So like that so I think about, even though I'm out here for change, I think about marketing, branding, how things look, when we called our show, What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. That was intentional, right? This Week in White Supremacy said it's intentional. I'm trying to think about marketing. And so like we could probably have a whole nother conversation around like marketing and branding, because that's the thing I probably think about the most. And that has helped us. Our logo, our approach to making sure that when we do things, we do it at a very professional, high level, has helped us to separate us from other organizations that may do similar work. You may do similar work,
but it's a polish, man. It's a wrapper on it, man. It's the packaging. 100%. It's everything. So let's bring it home here. There's been a tremendous conversation. Dude, I ask all my guests these two questions because for me, this is my masterclass. This brings it home. It ties it all together. Jasiri, what is the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every day?
Man.
Mantra, something you believe, something you start the day with, something that's always kind of that little birdie on your shoulder.
Yeah. So, I've been blessed to spend a lot of time with Harry Belafonte, who to me is the greatest artist activist of our generation. I think Mr. B is like 93. You spend 5 minutes with him. He talks about Paul Robeson and Paul Robeson's effect on him as his mentor. And, Paul Robeson said, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And so I think about like, when I come into the world, I'm an artist. I think about like my responsibility to make sure like the truth is a part of, whether it be my art, whether it be my organizing, that authenticity. So when we organize with like younger artists, we don't censor them. We have one rule, and one rule is you got to speak your truth. If it's not true, get it out of here, because that's our responsibility as artists.
Amen. And last but not least, man, like you look back at your life, you look back at those tough times, growing up, making the move to Monroeville and getting fucking shit on, man, racist thrown in your face, having to fight. You look at those really tough times when you had to dig down deep and harness that inner tenacity to pull you up and forward. And now you sit here with gratitude, mission, purpose, being a fucking leader in the community in this world, and you want to show up. What keeps you focused? What is your beacon? Jasari X, what is your North Star, man?
Oh man. I think, man, I would say like, the spirit of my mom. My mom passed in 2017. And, when I found out my mom passed, I was actually at a rally in Philadelphia for healthcare for workers, right? Like using my gifts and talents for that. And so like, I look at the sacrifice. I feel like my mom, sacrificed. My mom she didn't like her job, right? But my mom made that sacrifice to allow me to do what I love to do, and to do it at a level in which I feel like it's purposeful. So for me, I think about her sacrifice, and it's like now it's no question. Do I gotta sacrifice? Of course, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm part of a line of somebody that put their all into me, and now I'm able to put that into the world. And so, yeah, I would say, moms, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate you.
That's what it's all about. Big shout out to all the moms out there raising good kids like Jasari here and passing that on to your kids, right? Like that's what gives us the foundation to be good parents. And maybe 100%. Those who didn't, and maybe those who didn't grow up with good parents, you could lead by example to show them how the people in your community, your kids, man, you look at it like that, like you're taking care of them and showing them the right way. Keep on doing that, man.
I always said, like, because my dad wasn't around, that if I ever had a child, I would never not be in my child's life. So I'm thankful to be a father. That's one of the most important jobs. And I'm like, I'm in my child's life. I'm not going nowhere because I felt that pain. And so I got to pay it forward. You know what I mean?
Jasiri, man, dude, I want to thank you. Everyone, if you want to find out more, go to onehood.org. Where else could folks connect with you? Where could they learn more?
So we're on social media. I'm Jasiri _X on Twitter and Instagram. That's what I use the most. And we're One Hood on Twitter, the number One Hood, and we're One Hood Media on Instagram. Also, we have a YouTube page, which is the number One Hood Media, and Facebook. We have shows every week. This week in white supremacy, we just launched a new show called Brunch with a Black Man. Our director of advocacy and policy, Miracle Jones, is having conversations with Black men about mental health, which is super important. So so come check it out. And then go to blackpittsburgh.com, read about what's happening in our community, and check us out.
It's important. And just a quick note, we lost Twitch this week. Really important for Black men to speak up in mental health. And men in general, right? Especially like speak up, check in on your friends. Remember, Jasari, I want to thank you so much for joining me, hanging with me one moment here. To follow what we're talking about here, check in on your friends. Check in, say hello, what's up, and not just okay, cool, you're good, but really make sure your friends are good, and that's important.
And I would say like therapy is important. I was late to therapy. I was one of them people like, what's some other person going to tell me? And the first time I went to therapy, particularly when I lost my mom, I just bottled everything up. First time I went to therapy, I just bawled. I just let it all came out. So having somebody to talk to about your problems, like. We have organizations here in Pittsburgh that you can get it for free if you need it. Like find a therapist, a licensed therapist to talk to, and share your problems. It will make your life increasingly better.
Take note of that. Hang with me one moment here too. Thank you so much for your time. You're open, honest, keeping it real, all the good shit you're doing locally, abroad, and for everyone else. And for everyone listening out there, I hope the show resonated with you. If it did, share it. Sharing means caring. Leave a review, rating. It goes a long way. You know where to find out more at thepodcast.com. Remember, take care of each other, look out for one another, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.